Okay, there we go. And I will turn it over to Suzanne.
Thank you, Charlie. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second of 9 workshops in our Sustainable Landscape series. My name is Suzanne Barclay, and I'm the Executive Director of Cornell Cooperative Extension of Rockland. And tonight, we're very excited to have Dr. Frank Rossi as our speaker to address all of you lawn lovers out there. Since you've joined us tonight, I'm guessing you're already aware that water conservation is of special concern in our county. And that's because our drinking water supply essentially comes from the rain that falls within our borders and makes its way into our aquifers. A USGS analysis by Paul Heisig, published in 2010, determined that our problem in Rockland is that our peak water use occurs at the worst possible time of the year, the dry summer months of summer, when residents are watering their lawns and gardens, washing cars, filling pools, that kind of thing. The good news is that this is one of the very few environmental problems where we can each individually make a real and measurable difference where we need to right here in Rockland. It's hard to say that about a lot of environmental problems like plastic pollution, but water conservation is not difficult, it's not painful, and it saves you money. Hence our focus on outdoor water use. All of these workshops are designed to give you specific steps to take to reduce water use in your yard. In June, our workshop addresses climate and plant selection by Dr. Nina Bassett from Cornell. And in July, Master Gardener volunteer Donna D'Souza will present on soils and water conservation, and we'll alert you to all these workshops. So Charlie just mentioned that everyone is muted. Feel free to ask questions in the Q&A below, and we'll address them at the end. And then after the Q&A, there's a brief survey we'll ask you to complete that will pop up on your screen at the very end. If you have any feedback for us or specific questions here at Extension, please email us at rockland@cornell.edu. And finally, I want to thank our funders, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the Hudson River Estuary Program, and the New York State Water Resources Institute. Also, our communications manager, Charlie Payne, is the person who makes this happen. Dr. Frank Rossi is an associate professor in the horticulture section of the School of Integrated Plant Science at Cornell University. His focus is on turf grass management, especially as it relates to golf courses, and he's taught courses on this topic throughout Europe. He's the recipient of numerous awards for his environmental approach to turf management. Dr. Rossi, the screen is all yours.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. Hello to all. I don't know how many people know this, but I actually spent a little bit of time growing up in Rockland County. I had some family that lived in Ramapo back in the late 60s, early 70s. I was born and raised in Mount Vernon in the Bronx. So nice to be talking to people a little bit close to home that I believe is all generally referred to by outsiders as the New York metropolitan area, and people in New York City. Rockland County, of course, is upstate. So nice to see you all. Good to be here. Let me share my screen and start talking about my absolute favorite topic in the world, taking care of your lawn and yelling at homeowners for taking care of their lawns. It's become a part of my 30-year career, 25 of it at Cornell. So thanks very much for joining us. I'm glad to be part of this series. I'm glad to see it done as a series. Grateful to all of you that took the time to come. For those of you that might be watching the recording, hey to you too. And just remember, it's the people who aren't here that most of us need to worry about. So I'm very glad that you took the time out of your schedule. And I hope that the things we're able to share with you tonight and talk about tonight, you're able to tell the folks that aren't here that might not be aware in many cases, or might be aware and don't really understand the consequences, or might be aware, don't care about the consequences, don't care about the money, but maybe care about their neighbors or the growth of Rockland County. And there's a lot of simple equations that you have to factor in when you're thinking about a burgeoning population, which I can tell I'm sure you guys are. So just a little shameless promotion for us here at Cornell. We're on all the socials. And we put our information out there in a timely fashion. You can follow us in the different places. And our emphasis, one of the few in the land grant institutions around the country, is on environmental stewardship. And I think it's very much associated with our connection to the Ivy League. And we're the only agriculture school in the Ivy League. And so all of our agricultural, horticultural programs are very much influenced by that Ivy League sentiment. We have websites that we maintain for all the professional turfgrass managers, with particular emphasis on water quality protection in the case of golf courses and grounds, lawns. And in the case of sports fields, we actually have a big, strong emphasis on field safety. So we do a lot working with athletic field managers to measure the safety of those fields, both in hardness and rotational force. We want to be able to give our young people and athletes a safe place to play. We've really embraced multimedia. We've got a YouTube playlist that, if you really want to get geeked out, there's probably about 100 webinars and videos and things at our YouTube website. You'll see my lovely face in most of them, or students or colleagues. We started a Cornell turfgrass show last year during COVID, and now we've really turned it into a weekly 30-minute discussion of various aspects of progressively managing turf. So this is becoming really popular, and we're really happy to be able to share the message of the science-based recommendations we give, which is the basis of what we'll talk about tonight. Now, certainly when it comes to lawn care, we've got a special place in our hearts here at Cornell for all the do-it-yourself lawn care folks. And I know that you're inundated with do this, do that, or how do I do this myself? Or, I don't want to do it. Maybe I'll have a professional do it. What should I ask them to do? And I think it really begins with the philosophical approach to it. And our approach here is that your lawn is a really important environmental asset in your community. Not just maybe for the economic value it brings to the price of your home in neighborhoods where that matters a lot, but also that in heavily urbanized areas with lots of pavement, lawns provide great green funnels versus the gray funnels or green channels versus the gray funnels that you get on the pavement. And we'll talk a little bit more about that getting going. But most of all, here at Cornell, because I'm basically a city kid, I really have always devoted my entire career to studying grass and people. I have to say, I did the best I could to ignore people because of the subjectivity of it. But I think the pandemic has really brought back the importance of making sure everybody's got a really safely managed, sustainably managed green space. And this means different things in different places to different people. Certainly in Central Park, it means this. Now, no good grass guy, no good agronomist would talk to people he doesn't know without starting to talk about the weather, right? It's one of my favorite topics because I don't need to read scientific literature or partake in the debate about whether the climate is changing. I've been growing grass for 40 years across the northern United States and up and down the eastern seaboard, and now across the country and around the world with my research program here at Cornell. And I can tell you the climate is warming. Last year was among the warmest warmest years on record. In fact, the last 7 have been the highest and warmest 7 years we've had since we've been tracking weather records. Now, the interesting thing is, from a precipitation standpoint, while our friends to the southeast got a fair amount, it was deemed to be normal, near normal for us here in the Northeast. And I think that is a really good story to think about when it comes to irrigating lawns, water management, weather, and how climate change is going to impact these things. Now, certainly, if you just look in the summer months, right? If we're gonna talk tonight about eventually getting to how we're gonna manage water consumption for lawn use, right? It really, first and foremost, has to be focused on the summer months, right? The warmer and drier the summer is, the more likely you're going to be reliant on water just to sort of sustain grass at all, in the urban environment, like where you guys live. And so this past summer, through the COVID summer, we had, again, the warmest summer, about the warmest summer on record. At the same time, in that summer month, June, July, August, or July to September, you know, Rockland County, it's hard to say when you look, you'd have to drill really close in here to see, to get more than the divisional ranks. But this certainly is indicating you were near rain. But at the same time, look at the disparity here in the center part of the state and even northern Pennsylvania. Sorry about that. The center part of the state in northern Pennsylvania, I'm, you know, right below where I live, it was dry. If I went west, if I went east, it was wet. And so this is the nature sometimes of rainfall, that it's going to be really sporadic. And that's also going to create challenges with climate change. Now, let's talk about how it's going so far this year. This is the spring. I would put this on any good plant person's web list or bookmark tabs, the National Phenology Network. It's a wonderful way to track biological development, especially as it relates to plants. For those of you that, you know, might not be lawn lovers like Suzanne said, but maybe lawn haters who like other plants and are just here to see what the, you know, the evil lawn folks are talking about. I can tell you that this is a good network of well-intentioned folks that contribute significant amounts of data to produce these charts every few weeks. And one of the things you notice is for many of us in the northern climates, not so much in the center transition zone of the country, but certainly in northern climates, it's been a rapid rise of spring. It was a really warm winter and the springs has been fairly warm. Now, in the last several weeks, it's stalled. We're getting high temperatures, 10 degrees below normal. So I can tell you for sure, in the blooming plant world, you certainly have really good blooms that come on and stay on a long time. Now, as I start to talk a little bit about just basic lawn care stuff, one of the things I think is important is to remember some of the kinds of things you should look at to determine whether you want to do things. Now, I talk a lot to professionals, and we have access to websites, and you do too, of course, but might not be part of your daily routine. But we have websites that we go to, like the GDD tracker here on the right, that shows the growing degree day development, how crabgrass is germinating in areas. But if you don't want to pay attention to something sophisticated like that, you could look at your forsythias. Because typically, if your forsythias are in some sort of full bloom or on their way to green and gold, you can pretty much count on crabgrass beginning to emerge. And I bring this up because crabgrass, when you look at search engine optimization terms, you know, what people look for on the internet in the spring, crabgrass is one of the top three next to soil and mowing, or soil and fertilizing. So phenological indicators, very important. Check on those forsythia. Don't use those pre-emergence. Try a post-emergence. See where you have crabgrass. Maybe you can get the grass growing better there. Now, of course, you know, it's been a banner year. If you're in the plant world, maybe you'd consider it to be a mast year, if you will, for dandelions, coming on really strong. And in this case, and in this case, of course, because of the lawn not doing so good, the weeds are having a ball. So, you know, this is a case where if you really aren't tending to your lawn very much, where you don't do much more than mow it, maybe you don't feed it, but even if you didn't do that, it'd be hard pressed to have a lawn this bad if the soil was really good, right? This to me indicates probably the soil isn't necessarily functioning the way it should. And I can't actually tell you exactly what to do, but I can tell you this. If you figure out how to poke some holes, get some soil exposed, get some grass seed growing, and get some grass established in there, maybe with a little bit of fertilizer, you'd get grass established in there and the grass itself would build the soil. That is one of the inherent benefits of having grasses in urban environments, because of the soil building properties that perennial crops like grasses that lay down lots of roots and lots of organic matter contribute to the soil and, of course, the soil life. Now, one of my pet peeves among do-it-yourselfers is, hey, let me go out and buy one bag that's got everything I need and go out there once and do it. And, you know, of course, this is actually a product sold mostly in the South, but it is sometimes sold in the North, where you're killing weeds, you're preventing weeds, you're fertilizing, it's all in one, and it's unlikely that you're going to find the sweet spot where you're doing all of these things at the right time. So generally, I like to tell people, I really don't think it might be convenient. And you might say, well, it's foolproof, I don't have to worry about it. Yeah, that's true. And maybe you'd say, well, it's insurance just in case. Yeah, that could be true too. But I can tell you, you need less insurance and less health insurance if you take better care of yourself. So if the lawn's growing active and healthy, it is going to need fewer inputs. So here is the one question for us to ponder for this evening that we'll return to many times throughout the evening. And the question is simple: how to use less blank? Water, fertilizer, or pesticides, or all of the above. Two, if you plant the right grass, if you grow deep roots, if you mow high, and if you feed lightly in the fall, you will in fact use less of all of those things. Right? So let's explore these topics a little bit more moving forward. And before we do, let me see, are there any questions at all that have come up? Suzanne or Charlie, are you guys paying attention a little bit? See if there's any questions before I start getting into the meat of this thing.
Well, it's up to you. We do have a rather detailed question about buffalo grass.
Okay, let's hold on to that. We'll save that for the end.
Okay.
I'm happy to take up that question though.
Okay. We could hold all the questions to the end if that's okay.
Well, if that's what you'd like, that's fine. I'm happy to do it. Okay. So, but thank that person for asking about grasses, because that is the natural transition to getting that right grass in place. And I can tell you historically, like an example here, a research project at the University of Wisconsin with a former student of mine who's on the faculty out there, sodded some Kentucky bluegrass, high quality Kentucky bluegrass, and noticed that when they didn't fertilize it, it got weed infested. When they didn't put more than 2 and it had to put as many as 4 fertilizer applications a year. This is after almost 4 years of growing this lawn, right? And so, well, you say, well, how do grasses do if you don't fertilize them? Well, perennial ryegrass does a little bit better. You don't really find too many 100% perennial ryegrass lawns, because perennial ryegrass oftentimes has tough time in the summer, tough time in the winter. Even good perennial ryegrasses, they might persist in clumps in some areas where their conditions are ideal. But in general, a little bit less maintenance, you'd say, than Kentucky bluegrass. But really, in the last 25 years that I've been at Cornell, I've watched the turf type tall fescues continue to improve as traditional turf grasses that should be planted really throughout the Northeast on most home lawns. I mean, certainly this slide shows that, the 4 fertilizer applications look greener. But if one of the things we're really looking for is a uniformly green lawn, weed-free lawn, you can see tall fescue able to root deeply can just really perform excellent on most of the home lawns that we come across. Now, again, we're going to come back to this. This is a little side-by-side comparison we did at the Bethpage State Park. I've been doing research with the state parks for many years. We've done a bunch of projects at Rockland Lake State Park, as a matter of fact. And this is one project where we put tall fescue on the right and Kentucky bluegrass sod on the left. And we found that over about 1.5 years, 2 years, the Kentucky bluegrass on the left has completely failed from dry, sandy conditions, whereas the turf type tall fescue really has thrived in these conditions. So certainly the right plant in the right place is going to be critical. But that plant also has to have a soil that's functioning. And for a soil to function, the single most important thing isn't the chemical properties, or aren't the chemical properties. They're not even the biological properties. They're the physical properties. If you have a soil that will hold a little bit of water, hold a little bit of nutrients, help you establish some grass on it with just a little bit of fertilizer to get the system kick-started, if that soil will allow those plants to root deeply and start to produce organic matter up at the surface, you're going to immediately see good chemical properties, good biological properties, because the organic matter will be starting to build at the surface. And that is the engine that drives that soil health, vehicle that, sustains the grass above it. So it's really important to understand, while we put a lot of emphasis, oh, get a soil test, get a soil test. And, soil tests have a tendency to sell a fair amount of fertilizer too, by the way. And so I would more likely say, hey, what does your soil look like? Does it look, does it, when you hold it in your hand with a little bit of water, does it fall apart like powder? Does it hold together a little bit? If you pinch it between your fingers, does it spread out like a ribbon? I was glad to hear you're going to have one of these sessions on soils. I do think I can spend an entire workshop just talking about the importance of soil, but I can tell you it's a critical part of helping the grasses be successful and create that organic matter at the surface. Now, one of the problems we have a lot of times in urban environments, much like Rockland County, is that they tend to have shallow soils, that you've got bedrock or spoils or subsoils closer to the surface because much of the topsoil over the years, for whatever reason, has been removed. You're working with a very shallow soil. So that means my principle of growing deep roots becomes very challenged when you have these kinds of soil conditions. And I would encourage you to do everything you can to continue to build that soil and maybe break through some of the material below so that you can get a good 4 to 6 inches of root zone depth. That would be ideal. I mean, we certainly have lawns on 2-inch depth, so it's not like we know grasses can grow on the sidewalk. It's just if we want to use less stuff, water, fertilizer, and pesticides, having a deep, expansive root system is the key to that. The right grass on a halfway decent soil gets you 80% of the way home. Because what we're trying to do with lawns, and what I'm trying to get people to understand so they don't throw these things out with the bathwater, is that lawns provide this green filter in these urbanized areas, right? The landscape needs to be that green filter and keep things out of that gray funnel, right? That gray funnel that's channeling those pollutants. And so as you start to imagine, now, should we even have lawns? What do we have lawns for? Well, certainly the benefit in urban areas is the infiltration and the cooling effect. Now you can, Nina will talk about this at length when she starts talking about her street trees and the infiltration that you get from, a rural area with no pavement or no impervious surface to a high density or even medium density where you're between 30 and 100% of paved surfaces. So your infiltration goes down, your soils tend to be less physically in good shape, it's warmer. So having grass in heavily urbanized areas becomes even more challenging when you're considering having to reduce water use. Now, whenever we talk about water, whenever we talk about the value of the lawn in the urban environment, climate change presents the greatest argument for why it's important to have these green spaces. And it is because the dramatic increase in intense storms that we've been experiencing in the Northeast. Just a simple look at any chart. And there was, of course, a climate report that came out a number of years ago, and many climate reports have looked at this. But this is a conglomeration of a number of pieces of data from that report. The heaviest events are increasing by half-fold, 55% in the Northeast. So we're going to get more intense rainfalls, more heavy rainfalls, and likely longer periods of dry weather in between these rainfalls. In addition, these heavy rainfalls don't always replenish the soil fully, right? Because they run off so dramatically, right? That those lawns can only take so much water. Now, you might even see this happen when you run your sprinkler systems. Now, I can tell you, if your sprinkler systems have had to run at all this year, you're already overwatering. We have had virtually no time so far where most lawns in the Northeast would have, no lawns in the Northeast would have required supplemental irrigation, not just because there wasn't much evapotranspiration because it was cloudy and rainy, but because it's been cooler and it really hasn't been growing very much. Now, has it been growing lately? It certainly has been growing lately, right? And if you don't believe me, all you got to do is look around where you see the clippings piling up everywhere, right? So this is an important thing to consider in the springtime when the plants are surging growth like this. The last thing you want to be doing is adding more water to this system. The last thing you want to be doing is adding more fertilizer to this system. Why we have cultured the American public to run around their lawns in the spring, slinging fertilizer, when we know this happens every single spring, and all the fertilizer does is make it worse. Why we've gotten locked into that it continues to confound me, confuse me. We've been getting this message out for a really long time about sustainable ways to fertilize your lawn. Now, one of the things we want to keep in mind in the spring as we think about good best management practice for lawn care is keeping stuff out of the streets. Spill in fertilizer, clean it up. Don't blow your grass clippings onto the street that go into the storm sewer and into the Hudson River. All of those things, if you have a storm sewer on your road, you've got river or lakefront property. So it's really important to understand the value of these lawns, but also that you have to care for them properly. And again, reminding you about the important filtration benefits these lawns have. Now, we've been playing around with a number of different things at Cornell University, and I'll show you also a picture. This is at Longwood Garden in Philadelphia. So for all you plant people, real hardcore plant people, you know about Longwood Gardens, the wonderful botanic garden outside of Philly in Chestnut Hill. Sean Kister, the director of grounds there, is a good pal and was on our turf show recently. And so we're starting to reimagine the way we think about mowing our lawns. And so certainly one of the things we tell people is to mow higher, right? Now, I'm not saying this is the height you want to mow. Because if you did this, most people, most do-it-yourself homeowners do not have equipment that can actually mow this grass. If you do this on your home lawn, you have to go in there with a line trimmer and then go in with a lawnmower. So I do not recommend homeowners generally in the Northeast embrace the no mow May thing. I think you want to be, you want to be very careful about the no mow May thing. So when it comes to fertilization, we abide by this Interstate Water Pollution Control Commission document, this voluntary turf fertilizer initiative. And again, you can access this report on the internet by Googling either the Water Pollution Control Commission or the Voluntary Turf Fertilizer Initiative. And in that document, you'll see the pretty much standard 5 R's. But what we're trying to do with that last R is, how do we fertilize to support the turf's ability to retain storm water and nutrients, right? This is really focusing nutrient management on the value that lawn provides, not simply that it's weed-free, not simply that it's emerald green for 8 months a year, but that it provides that landscape that services our needs in the urban environments. Now, when you think about fertilization, I like to draw our attention to, in the document, the very simple schedules that are offered. Now, in my opinion, most homeowners shouldn't be fertilizing their lawns more than once or twice a year. If you have a lawn that's more than 10 to 15 years old, that's had a pretty good lawn on it for a long time, you need very little fertilizer over the course of a season, especially if you've got a good, strong root system. And if we just at least look at maybe you did one fertilizer a year, you can see that late summer, like I said in the question, feed lightly later. This is what I mean. This early September timeframe remains one of the most important times to fertilize your lawn, because at that time, you're also getting the ability to feed the root system and not necessarily putting nitrogen into wasteful top growth that requires you to mow more. So by shifting your nutrient program to later in the season, if you want to, fertilize twice and you want a little bit more spring color, certainly, but a lot of that nitrogen is best applied as slow release nitrogen. And certainly if you've got a younger lawn, less than 10 years old, maybe 2 applications of fertilizer makes a little bit more sense. But unless you have regular, unless the kids are playing soccer on your lawn, or everybody's walking across your lawn, or, you just have a lot of traffic and it gets abused all the time, you shouldn't need 3 and 4 fertilizer applications to most lawns. Now, when you think about environmentally sensitive areas, right, along a waterfront, right, maybe along a storm sewer area, you certainly want to think about this in wetlands, maybe other areas that are a little bit more sensitive. Again, you can see the same fertilizer regime, not much fertilizer, much less, never putting on 4 times. And again, focusing that 1 time in the latter part of the season. Okay, so I'm going to take a little, we're about halfway through. I'm taking a drink. And I was invited specifically by Suzanne and provided some information from her. Because for some reason, people are watering lawns a lot in Rockland County. And I would just encourage you to, first of all, think about this. If you want to use less water, the same rules we just went through apply. The right grass on a deep soil, on a good soil that it can root deep into, that you mow high and feed lightly in the fall, will generally require less inputs of all kinds, but specifically less water. Well, Suzanne was kind enough to share this implementation plan that came out a little over a year ago now, that I believe this is seminar series is a way of trying to cajole the citizenry in Rockland County to see the scope of this issue. And as Suzanne so deftly said, painless. I mean, we're not talking about going to get root canal, folks here. We're talking about responsible water use in the landscape. And that just means in many cases, let's be a little bit more thoughtful about it. That's all I've got to say. I mean, I'm going to go through a whole spiel here, but the thing we all have to realize is you just got to be thoughtful about it, right? And I don't want to shame people into, well, I have a green lawn, I must be watering excessively, and I got a brown lawn, so I'm a better person than you. I don't want to get into that baloney, right? We got that mess with meat. We got it with politics. We got it with all kinds of stuff. Let's not do it over this, right? Let's look at the problem, see the data, see the simple ways to solve it, and see if we can do it collectively. And as the state extension turf specialist, I have a vested interest in seeing you guys be successful doing this. It's a model for other parts of the country. It seems odd that we're doing it in here, in the Northeast, where we get about 50 inches of rainfall a year. Well, I can tell you this is a deeper and more contentious conversation when I travel to North Scottsdale, Arizona, like I'll do next week. So I think it's important to keep in mind, we want to do this in a thoughtful, data-driven way, and I'm happy to be part of it. So what's the first piece of data? Well, guess what? You guys live in a really nice place and more people are going to move there. And I bet you I wonder if this was done before COVID, this modeling was done before COVID, because if your area is anything like our area, and I promise you, I live up here in the middle of nowhere in Ithaca, and people are moving up here. So if they're moving up here, I can bet for sure they're moving to Rockland. So let's at least agree on this is the first issue that is driving the bus here. There's going to be more people, right? And when not only are there more people, but it appears from your report that most of those people who use water from the sources that were involved in this document are single family homes, right? Far and away the customer class for Rockland County. Now, if it's single family homes, let's look at a little bit of fun data here. One Palm Springs golf course for a day is 800,000 gallons. And that's very interesting because I actually do some research with golf courses in Palm Springs. 1 day of snowmaking at Lake Tahoe is 400,000 gallons. Filling an average Los Angeles pool, 18,000 gallons. And that is probably one of the bigger wasters of water I think we see. And the supply of a single family home for a day is approximately 361 gallons. Now, I don't know how that jives with data available in Rockland County, but I got this off of a website from the California Water Commission out west. I also took this off. Again, looking at how people use water. Well, certainly in California, the thing you got to keep in mind about California, right, is that agriculture uses a bulk of the water that's not reserved for natural processes, right? Half of all the water in California is reserved for the ecology of the functioning of the natural world out there. But once you get into municipal use, right, you see again in California, lawns and pools at the top of the list, toilets, showers. As Suzanne said, a lot of these things that we do, I think this is pretty funny. Leaks. I think if you asked any municipal water supplier, they'll tell you, boy, if we could patch more of these leaks, we'd probably be able to save a fair amount of water. I think about leaky pipes like I think about, light bulbs that aren't LED, right? We've gone through a massive shifting out of light bulbs here on the Cornell campus. Just from fluorescent to LED saved us tons of electricity. And I think about that same thing when we think about leaky pipes in municipal systems. And certainly in the case of California, golf courses, because every inch of it has to be watered, whereas most golf courses here in the Northeast, the irrigation is pretty much down the middle. Now, at the end of this document, or somewhere in the middle of this document, I thought there was a really important point just to highlight. First off, in the section on future water supply. So first off, what do we got to do? What do you guys got to do by 2050? Well, you got to reduce your demand. You've got to conserve water. Otherwise, you're going to be building a lot of stuff, and it looks like that's going to cost a bunch of money, and maybe develop new water supplies, upgrade wastewater. But I think it starts, and I'm glad to be part of the conservation with regard to water use on lawns. So let's get to it. Irrigation systems don't kill lawns, people kill lawns, right? So it's the old line about you have a good system, but it's not working right. Or how do you know if your system works? Because it goes on, right? We see this a lot, particularly in dry years throughout the country. There we go. So here's, I think, a really important question. And I want to explore this with you because I wonder if I can't convince you that you need a heck of a lot less water than you might think you need. Let's first talk about how this works, right? How does this work? Well, there is a term we use in turfgrass management called, in growing plants in general, called evapotranspiration. And essentially the way to think about evapotranspiration is it's the evaporation of water out of the system that doesn't go through the plant. And transpiration is the water out of the system that goes through the plant. Either way, that's considered water lost. The water gets drained out of that soil into the atmosphere. It gets resupplied by rainfall or irrigation. So there are two inputs and two outputs, right? Now we could argue, well, some of it leaches out. Okay, but it's going to be, if it's done right, it's going to be minuscule, right? Water gets held to the soil particles and the roots grow along those soil particles. And that's how the plants survive. So it's important to first understand this is the watering equation. Input, output, input, output. The water you put in, the water that comes out. So to a certain extent, our ability to balance these things will help us keep a good looking lawn with not much water. All right, let's get a few things straight here. This is a very simple graph that it doesn't even matter the time frame because things haven't changed that dramatically. What I want you to focus on is this blue line that's essentially the 100th meridian in the United States of America. And right at the 100th meridian, and actually there's a fair amount of research that says this line is moving east, which means it's drier to the west. What we're looking at here is the amount of rainfall that comes down minus the evapotranspiration that goes off, okay? So if everything was perfect, the rainfall equaled the amount of water that went off, it would be zero, right? And so you see, right at the meridian, it's about 0 inches a year, precipitation minus average, and the PET is potential evapotranspiration. evapotranspiration. It's just a different model. So what am I talking about? I'm basically saying that most of the time, if not all of the time, we get enough rainfall on an average basis to account for the water that leaves the system, right? But when you get out west, you can see in Southern California and Arizona, right, down to Texas, all of the areas where the mountains impact water and rain shadows, right? This is the arid part of the country to the west and the humid part of the country to the east. So basically, this graph is telling us over the course of most years, Rockland County generally gets enough rainfall that meets evaporative demands. So let's look at this a little bit more intensely. Again, Rockland County, right down here. Oh, sorry, Rockland County. Sorry about that. This is Rockland County, right? Yeah, this Orange County here. So Rockland County, last year you had between, from 1981 and the 30-year period from 81 to 2010, you were averaging between 45 and 55 inches a year rainfall. And that is well above what you would lose in evapotranspiration. I looked at some climate models. This is what's predicting out for the next 100 years, what the annual precipitation rates are going to be like. Now, of course, if you live in the desert Southwest, that's very alarming because it's going to get drier there. But one of the things that's going to happen to us up here is we're generally going to see an increase in rainfall, not a decrease. Now, you got to put that together a little bit with when the rain falls. A closer look at summer precipitation, and you can still see, sorry about the quality of this picture, I had to blow it up out of a paper. You can see we're right on the edge of where it looks like we're going to have just about the right amount just in the summer. So what is normal precipitation in the month of July in Rockland County, right? Well, it says it's about 4 inches. Looks like over that 30-year period, you got a little bit over 4 inches. Now, the rule of thumb with lawns is generally people will tell you lawns need 1 inch of water per week, right? That's what they need supplied, okay? So if there's 4 weeks in July and the lawn needs 1 inch of water a week, and you get typically 4 inches in July, at least the last 30-year period says you get that, why are we irrigating lawns? We should be getting almost enough rainfall, certainly to keep them alive. They may not be verdant Yankee Stadium green, but they certainly should be alive. And here's another point. I found this really cool data at our Northeast Climate Center. This guy, R.D. Gaetano, is based here at Cornell University. And I looked at the precipitation time series since the late 1800s to 2020. How much does it rain on average in the 3 months of June, July, and August, right? Well, if it rained, in summer months, we evapotranspirate in summer months between 4 and 4.5 inches of water, about 1 inch to 1.25 inches a week, right? And that means over a 3-month period, we'll lose between 12 and 13 inches of water. Now, if you look at this chart, since the dawn of weather record keeping in the 1890s, we average about 12 inches of rain in those 3 months. Again, 4 inches of rain falls in per month in 3 months, giving us a 12-inch average. Furthermore, look at what's happened since 2000. You've had consistently above that rainfall pattern through the summer months, certainly more up than you have down. Again, asking the question, why are we using so much water to irrigate if the data seems to indicate we're getting a fair amount of rainfall? In fact, I didn't even want to get into this, but they also broke out how much wetter we're going to be in the fall, and we're going to start seeing wetter and wetter falls, particularly in the Northeast. So the question is, should lawns be irrigated? Well, let me take a different angle on this and go to some colleagues that had to deal with this out west a few years ago. And articles came out when California was going through the drought about how, well, yeah, everybody, says landscaping gets a bad rap. Does it really waste water? Well, the chairwoman of the Water Resources Control Board in California during the drought basically said, listen, you got to protect your trees when things are dry. We're not asking you to kill your lawn. Maybe let it get a little golden. A lot of people overwater their lawns. She's absolutely right. She is absolutely, positively right. A lot of people overwater their lawns. So most people, if they cut back slightly, 10 to 20%, most people would not even notice the change in the landscape. It's getting to the point where communities are starting to ban grassy lawns for new homes. Now, this is back in 2015. This has happened again recently in Texas and Colorado and Utah that are experiencing very severe droughts again this past year. Now, in California, I wouldn't recommend you guys did this, get rid of the lawn and put these, stone things in. They were paying people to do this in California for a while. And certainly xeriscaping is a way to go. But at the same time, these environments don't really provide much cooling. And when you look at the air conditioning costs in these houses, you generally see the air conditioning costs go up significantly in houses where there's xeriscaping like this, because there's no water moving through the system to hydrate that urban environment, no matter how much shade you give it. So I would really encourage you to be thoughtful about how you think about lawns. Now, again, apologize for some of the graphics here, but this was a good little study I came across that I want to highlight before I wrap up here. One is, first off, it surveyed about 500 people in 2013 across the United States, just called people randomly who had lawns. They had to have a lawn, right? And they asked them if you have an irrigation system. And so half the people said, yep, I got an irrigation system. So how long in the season do you typically have to water your lawn? Now, I would say most people in Rockland County should be in the 1 to 2 months a year. Certainly the end of July until early August, I would say would be the most time you'd have to do. 2 months at the longest, you would have to irrigate a lawn in Rockland County. The interesting thing they asked these people, does the cost of water impact your decision to water your lawn? I thought it was fascinating. A full third said, I don't care how much it costs. I'm going to pay it. So that's very interesting. And then you see a spread and you say, the cost of water really impacts what I'm going to do. So generally, I was surprised to see how many people, and this is common to see, particularly out west where they're used to paying for water. Here's what concerns me a little bit. If you have irrigation systems, how often do you service it? When something breaks, 40%. So what's this telling me? Well, this is telling me that a lot of people with irrigation systems don't really take care of them very well. Certainly a third of them are doing it once a year, but look, where are you at? You're in Rockland County. You folks are having lawn irrigation systems. How much are you servicing it, right? And when you do it, are you doing it or are you hiring a professional? And so, of course, for those of you that are here that are doing it, right, we want to make sure you pay attention. But the most important thing is this, and I was shocked to hear it. Do you track how much water you use to maintain your lawn and landscape? 80% of the people said, no, I don't track how much water I use. It just goes on. And so what happens is this example on the right here, and again, assuming you live in a place where you start watering in February, right? They turn the sprinkler system on in February as a percentage of a summer maximum. So in February, in this part of California, they got to water 60% of what they water in the summer. But then by March, they set it and forget it. And so all summer, you're putting out 110% or a little bit more than you even need in the summer, instead of tracking the weather a little bit and moderating that water. And so when we talk about conservation that'll be painless, see all this water you're saving here? This is that painless contribution you make by just paying attention and adjusting your watering accordingly, right? Now, this is a lot easier to do with automatic systems and flow meters and sensors. So if you're investing in an irrigation system, let me encourage you to invest in a smart system. A system that's going to turn off when the rain comes, right? That looks at flow rate, that sees the last time you watered, that monitors your water use compared to last year, right? But also, this is tall fescue on the right and Kentucky bluegrass on the left. And what I want to show you here is a very interesting chart. I try to draw everybody that I talk to about this water issue, I try to draw their attention to this research of how important grass types are. Now, I can tell you, it's really hard to get some of these good varieties, but this is a study where they maintained Kentucky bluegrass varieties. And what do they got? 20 of them here or something like that, maybe 25 of them here. They watered them and they kept them looking really good. And then right on this day, they shut the water off. And then they monitored every day for the next 80 days, how much green tissue, how much brown tissue. And what you notice is there are some varieties like Geronimo that within 20 days are 50% brown, 50% green, right? But a variety like Mallard is the water's been off for 45 days and it's still half green. And I believe most people during times of water limitations, half brown, half green is really going to be the target. Now, if you want to be at 75%, you want it to look a little bit better, you still have basically a month that you don't have to water if you've got these good varieties. Let me show you the picture again. This is what some of these varieties look like. This happens to be turf type tall fescue on the right here, and these are Kentucky bluegrasses on the left. So grass type matters a lot, as well as your irrigation system. So what are some best management practices for your irrigation system? Well, you got to design and maintain a system that applies water uniformly to an intended area. You got to determine how much water you need. There should be best management practices that you look at. And certainly if you're hiring a pro, are those pros adhering to these Irrigation Association BMPs? And the basis of these BMPs is simple. You design your system to efficiently apply water, you install it right? And then you manage it properly by using data to determine how much to water. Now, the simple way to do it is go to our Northeast Climate Center website with the lawn watering tool. You can enter your zip code, and the last time your lawn was watered, put in the month and the day of the year, hit submit, and it'll tell you if you have to water your lawn. So there's lots of tools that are out there now. Assessing uniformity, this is a big part of it. This is a study that a colleague of mine did out in Utah, where they looked at landscape watering and certainly watering the sidewalk and how ridiculous this looks, right? Watering the sidewalk. So this is an example of how poor watering translates to water use. So this is in Utah, where they get about 10 to 12 inches of rainfall a year. So they're getting significant amounts of evapotranspiration. So generally, we say a well-watered lawn irrigates to about 80% of evapotranspiration rates, okay? So 80% is the number you want to be at. Now, because many systems are not that uniform, generally we say, well, maybe 100 to 110% you could water of ET to be able to keep all the spots growing well. And the only places that were even close to that were the golf courses. Look at some of these HOAs, 300 times the evapotranspiration. Business parks, 400 times. So in other words, this is applying 4 times more water than is lost through evapotranspiration. 4 times more water than is lost through evapotranspiration. So I can tell you, getting these systems in shape is a big task. Some problems are easy to repair, but you just got to go out and watch the heads, right? You've got to convince homeowners to allow grass to show visual symptoms of stress before irrigating. Every article, every research paper says the same thing. Now, ultimately, what I'm going to advocate for, probably not, I would probably think we're going to see these widespread use in the next 5 years. And these are soil moisture sensors. And I believe once we turn the irrigation systems over to these soil moisture sensors, this study here, this is a study of agricultural engineers at the University of Florida. They showed they reduced water use 65% using soil moisture monitors to turn on the irrigation systems versus a homeowner turning on the irrigation systems. Now, these are getting a little bit more sophisticated. This was a startup that was using these soil moisture sensors, measuring temperatures, wireless, plug to your phone, plug to your irrigation systems. All of these things are there and available. And I would encourage you that if you have an irrigation system, to invest in a smart system, because you will use less water. Okay. Thank you very much. I sort of rushed there at the end because I saw that I was running out of time. I'm going to stop sharing because I'm right at 8 o'clock. Sorry, Suzanne. I got a little bit verbose there at the end, but I'm happy to stay and take some questions. Sorry to keep some of you.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Rossi. That was excellent. So why don't we get a few questions. So one was, the first one says that they're taking care of their father at his house, and the lawn has patches of brown and orange and green. So it's clearly a sick lawn. And some people have suggested buffalo grass. So what are the pros and cons? Does it grow well in this area? This person also asked, with lots of new development in our area, animals have nowhere to go and are starting to chew up the lawn, like skunks. Is there something one can apply to grass that's safe for animals, but also deters them?
Okay, let me try to unpack this. I think what you said, Suzanne, is probably the right answer, that lawn's sick with something. I would, like I said earlier, I would start with, making sure it's got enough light, making sure the soil can hold water, but doesn't stay too wet. And now's a good time to plant grass. If you got bare soil, throwing just, any patch mix, any lawn seed, go to the garden center and just grab a bag of seed. If it says tall fescue on it, even better. Just throw it out there and see if it'll start to plant and grow. And I think this is what I tell people in general is people like, well, what do I got to throw grass seed for? I got a lawn. What am grass seeds for when you're planting a lawn? And I would say, no, you got bare soil. You should be putting grass seed out all the time. Grass seed is relatively inexpensive. It completely innocuous to the environment. And by dumb luck, you might get the right plants that'll grow there if you just keep throwing grass seed. So I do not recommend buffalo grass for northern climates. So you can tell that person that they maybe should think about the short grass prairie areas of this country for buffalo grass. We haven't seen any widespread success of buffalo grass, but the sentiment of slow growing grasses, grasses that don't grow very much, don't use as much water, certainly is good, but it's going to really stand out. It's going to look darker brown through the summer months. And, the aesthetic pressures that most people are under in urban areas makes that very difficult. So lawns looking different. That's a little crazy. And then the last part is animals. A lot of times skunks and raccoons are coming into the lawn looking for grubs in your lawn. And generally you'll have people tell you, well, you have to put an insecticide down to prevent the grubs. And certainly if you have a history of animals coming and scavenging for grubs, the first thing I would tell you to do is get your lawn planted and then consider grub preventative control for a year or two until the animals sort of don't get grubs there and stop coming. They'll keep coming because they remember they had a meal there. So they're going to keep coming. And it's not necessarily that they don't have as much habitat, but there's really good food there. Those grubs are plump and juicy and they love them and they can hear them. In fact, our entomologist here at Cornell is studying the sound waves of the chewing, because that is how the skunks and raccoons hear and notice the grubs are there.
Wow.
So don't put an insecticide down unless you have a history of grub problems. Don't plant buffalo grass, and try to get some turf type tall fescue onto that soil growing this spring.
Thank you. So another listener is asking, can you describe the common types of weed grasses and how to eliminate them?
No. The answer is no. I cannot, in any reasonable amount of time, explain the weed grasses. Generally, the biggest grassy weed we have a problem with, have historically had a problem with, is crabgrass. It's germinating now and it'll thrive through the summer. You'll see little plants in bare areas in the landscape. We're also starting to see a bigger problem with goosegrass. It germinates a little bit later and generally is in bad soils and dry areas. We're starting to get Japanese stilt grass, an invasive C4 grass, making it out of the woods into the lawn because it's evading our pre-emerging crabgrass strategy, and the goosegrass is evading our pre-emerging crabgrass strategy. And we're also developing problems with sedges and things like false green Kailinga. Again, a warmer season plant with the climate changing becoming a bigger problem. And so many of our traditional controls that we've used for weedy grasses, because we've used chemicals so persistently and for so long, we're developing new weed problems that have evaded the way we've been controlling weeds for a long time. So our ability to now find these grasses and maybe spot treat them with some post-emerging control or even non-selective organic controls like final sand or, clove oil, stuff like that, that maybe makes you feel better, as not systemic, just burns back. That's a way to avoid blanketing applications for these weed grass problems.
So someone asked, how much does the amount of sunlight a lawn gets matter? So full sun versus partial versus shady.
Everything. Grasses are generally tolerant of shade. They don't like it. They sort of come from the great savannas of northern Africa, is where the grass species was thought to have started on the planet as it made its way out in its association with us. And those are full sun environments. We have cool season grasses, fescues, fine fescue, tall fescue are shade tolerant. And I would say you got to have a minimum of 4 hours of some kind of sunlight to grow a decent lawn. Less than 4 hours, you're better off planting something that isn't grass or thinning the canopy. Once you get outside of 4 to 6 hours, now you can pretty much grow whatever grass you want.
Okay, and then Dr. Rossi, you mentioned that the website that tells you when you need to water, I think it was the Northeast Regional Climate Center.
Yes.
Could we put that in the chat maybe?
Let me find, yeah, I'll put the link in the chat for sure.
Okay, and then finally someone asked, what about trees surrounding grass? Does that also affect how much water a lawn needs?
Well, let's be candid. I mean, it's nothing that a chainsaw couldn't solve, right? Couldn't we say it's nothing a chainsaw couldn't solve? And you can tell Dr. Bassick I said that too, because she's going to come on and completely downgrade my plant material compared to her plant material. I put the link to the lawn watering thing in the chat.
Okay.
So obviously grasses have to live in an integrated landscape with trees. This is just the way it works. And so there's two things going on. One is light and one is water. So if the problem is you get Norway maples that, they crowd out other trees. They're not going to be good with lawns. But there are many, many shade trees that work perfectly fine with lawns because the leaves aren't always there, number one. And number two, you know, they tend to not be as dense a canopy. Now you start to get closed canopy on trees, you're not going to be able to grow a healthy lawn, period. But if you can get a little, you know, it depends on how your property is oriented as to how much sunlight your lawn's going to get. But the other thing to consider is if your lawn has a decent loamy soil, except for when things get really, really dry, they can live pretty well together, the trees and the lawn. Now, when things get really dry, you'll see the lawn under the drip line start to suffer more than the lawn away from the tree. So it's a fierce competition for water, for sure, between grasses and trees. But most of the time, with the rainfall that we get in most years, we don't see it to be something that the grasses and trees can't figure it out.
All right, well, it looks like there are no more questions. So I want to thank you so very much. My takeaways are that we get sufficient rainfall, especially since 2000. We don't need to irrigate, and it's not hard to conserve. So, but you said if you must irrigate, use a smart soil moisture sensor or monitor.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your experience, and also for making it so specific to us here in Rockland. We really appreciate it.
I'm happy to do it. Yeah, you guys got yourself in a pickle down there.
Well said.
Yeah, you guys are in a bit of a pickle down there. It makes me feel happy living in the middle of nowhere. All right, Suzanne, thank you very much. Thank you, Charlie. Good night, everyone.
All right, good night all. Thank you.